is a total disgrace, because Ed Miliband has talked a lot about Plan A, Plan B, Plan C for Alex Salmond. But what is Ed Miliband's Plan B? If the Tory party win the next general election, there is no Plan B, and Scotland cannot wait to see if the Tories win the next general election. And when it comes down to, people spoke a couple of months ago when UKIP won the European elections in this country. You should ask the question how it is that UKIP, the BNP in blazes is what I like to call them, could win a European election. And the prospect of a racist, right-wing coalition government is more likely than ever when you look at the polls that are taking place in England. 48% of English voters backing the Tory party and UKIP. And I was never, when people like to talk about, oh, the nationalist, I'm not a nationalist. I was a born and bred unionist. I was born in Liverpool and spent my whole life believing in the union. And it's been a gradual process over the last few years. And what swung it for me, like for many people, are my two young children, a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and another child on its way at Christmas. And when I look at my children, I consider the fact that I can no longer take for granted what their future will be. The idea that if they work hard, then they will do okay, that they will have free education, a free health service. None of those things can be taken for granted anymore. And when you have that great political beast, Gordon Brown, taken out and wheeled out and told as though he's some political soothsayer and he knows best, I ask this question: how can that man, who is a political failure, not a political beast, but a political failure, be expected to tell us what to do? When Gordon Brown tells us that a vote for independence will break 100 years of Labour achievements, he forgets that's 12 years as Labour councillor. He told the Labour Party that he had to break with 100 years of Labour traditions. That year after year, at CBI dinners, as Chancellor, he stood up in his coat of tails and said that we had to privatise. He was messianic in his proof for privatisation. He wrote the blank cheques for the illegal wars in Iraq. He was the man. He was the man who out-Thatchered Margaret Thatcher and turned London into a playground for the super rich. So when you get the Labour politicians and the Westminster parties daring to talk of solidarity with the people of Liverpool and the people of Manchester, I say yes, 100% as an internationalist. I believe in solidarity with the people of Glasgow, Dundee, Aberdeen, Liverpool, Manchester, but I also believe in solidarity with the people of Dublin, of Paris, of Karachi, of Bombay. I believe in international solidarity. And when I read a newspaper article today that talked of 500 people, 500 refugees fleeing with their lives through human traffickers and dying on a ferry near Malta last week, and that 300 or 400 of those individuals are Palestinian families, it sickens me. The double standards, the foreign policy that this country engages in, and I have a whole shopping list like I'm sure many of you do, but even if we change the double standards, that means we shake hands with the butchers and the dictators hanging on the coattails of the United States, then that's enough for me, an independent Scotland. And for those who in recent days have talked about cybernats and talked about abuse, I say this: whether it be Ed Miliband, whether it be Jim Murphy with his eggs, I'm not countenancing, I'm not excusing the eggs on Jim Murphy, but when it comes down to this, when Ed Miliband runs away from the people yesterday because he's called a liar, it's because he is a liar. That's why he ran away. And when Jim Murphy decides to suspend his tour of Scotland for a few days, I say this: there are people around this planet who brave bullets, who brave bombs, assassinate assassination squads and torture. What a wimp! What a wimps the Labour Party have turned into. So when they want to talk about nationalism, I say this, let's talk about British nationalism. For some reason, we have not seen one of those leaders of Better Together in recent months. A man called Lord Robertson of Port Ellen. The guy who used to be the UK Defence Secretary. The man who used to be the Secretary General of NATO, who a couple of months ago said, if we vote yes tomorrow, then it will be a cataclysmic event. He said it would unleash the forces of darkness. He said it would lead to the balkanization of Europe and it would reignite terrorism in this country. I say this, we should be worried about the likes of British nationalism that believe braving their flags, whichever flag they want to wear, and they convince our young people to go to illegal wars. That is what we want to stop. We want internationalism. And when it comes down to the question of poverty, nobody has a crystal ball. Whichever politician stands before you and says it's going to be this way or that way, I'll say they're not telling you the truth. Whichever party they're in. I'm not in any political party, so unfortunately I can say what I want to say. But I'll say this. We don't have a crystal ball, but I'll guarantee you one thing. If we vote no tomorrow, then we are guaranteed austerity for generations to come. When a man like Gordon Brown stands there, a man who was Prime Minister, never gave Scotland any extra powers, but comes to us as a backbench MP, an assassin, that's what that man is, comes to us as a backbench MP with no powers to offer the people of Scotland powers. He is a liar and an assassin. We are guaranteed next general election £40 billion of austerity cuts, which is why when you look at Question Time, when David Cameron and his front bench opposition MP, front bench of cabinet MPs, 28 of them, 23 of them multi-millionaires, stand there at Question Time week after week, goading the Labour opposition, sitting there shamefaced. Why are they sitting there shamefaced? They're sitting there shamefaced because they have nothing to say when David Cameron says, what will you do about the cuts? Will you reverse them? And their response is, no, we will not reverse them. We will implement them in a different way. I'm one of those that believes whether you do it a different way or whether you do it slower, the impact is the same, because every 5 years in this country, we know that the bookies speculate on the result of a general election, but we know in this country when the result comes through, it's the same every time. It's disaster for the pensioners, it's disaster for the poor, it's disaster for the vulnerable. They are the ones who lose the general election, and we want to change that. So when it comes down to it, tomorrow, every vote is going to start. Every vote. You need to get out to your communities. You need to knock your doors. You need to take those posters that are out there. Because I will say this finally, and I want to conclude, that the vote tomorrow is our first opportunity in a lifetime, in many lifetimes, to change our future, to change our destiny. And when we vote tomorrow, if we vote yes, then for the very first time in the history of this country, from warfare to welfare, from economy to foreign policy, the people of Scotland will make the decisions that affect the people of Scotland. So I want to conclude by saying, hey, I can't emphasize it enough. We can have thousands of people standing in George Square, shoulder to shoulder, in solidarity, but it's what you do in the hours ahead that will make the difference. We need to knock every door. We know it's been a carnival atmosphere, walking through Buchanan Street in Glasgow on Saturday, walking through George Square, people smiling at each other. We want to be smiling at each other for years to come. So tomorrow, get out there, vote, knock on your doors. If people can't get to the vote, give them a lift, give them the money for the bus fare, do whatever it takes, and let's make sure we win this vote with a landslide. Thank you, brothers and sisters.